Okay, so once again, hi and welcome everyone to this webinar presented by Commerce Tools and Magnolia. And thanks for taking the time to play a little buzzword bingo with us. There are heaps of buzzwords in our industry and like in any other good industry. And today we're going to be focusing on three of them. Those are personalization, omnichannel, and headless. And we're going to talk about what's actually the real deal behind them. I'm joined by Tove Zimmerman from Magnolia. Hey, Christopher.
Hey, Roman. Maybe just introduce myself quick. My name's Christopher Zimmerman. You can call me Topher. I've been a developer for about 20 years, most of that in web, and been involved in a number of startups and worked at agencies and so forth. And now for about 5 years, I've been at Magnolia, first on the core team and most recently as a product manager. And due to my background, I still have a big focus on kind of the developer experience of using Magnolia.
Okay, thanks. And I'm Roman Zenner from Commerce Tools. I work here as a content writer and industry analyst, mainly producing content on white papers and also taking a look at what the e-commerce landscape looks like. Okay, so some logistics for this webinar. So we're gonna have like 30 minutes of presentation and afterwards a little Q&A session. You can use the Q&A functionality in Zoom to ask the questions, and then we collect them and then discuss them afterwards. And after the webinar is finished, we will send you the recording as well as the slides, so you can revisit our content. Okay, so Topher, what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, Roman, today I want to do a deep dive drill down and loop you in on the synergies of streamlining customer-centric core competencies and cross-discipline teams inside and outside of the box to disrupt the silos and optimize the paradigm shifts and value propositions.
Well, bingo. Okay, but seriously, what are you going to talk about?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I want to just cover like the three probably most hyped buzzwords in digital marketing. But the point is that they really aren't overhyped. I mean, these are three very established approaches that have proven that they're basically worth their buzz. So I wanted to kick off with personalization.
Okay, so the stage is yours.
Okay. Yeah, without personalization, every visitor is going to experience a website in exactly the same way, regardless of the browsing history, their location, their user profile, or even their shopping history. And visitors are going to feel like, doesn't the site know me? Why isn't it helping me reach my goals, such as making my purchase? So to just have the shortest definition, it's a digital experience such as a website, that is customized for you based on some information. So I've created some very complicated diagrams to illustrate this. With a regular website, you basically have the same content for everyone. You've got your content in your CMS on the left side. It's going through some kind of experience and delivery. And every visitor, Stan and Jan, in this case, are going to see the same thing. Whereas when we have a personalized website, we have different content for everyone. Not that every single person has a different experience, but depending on who you are, you can have a tailored experience that's more relevant for you. In this example, which is a really common use case, we have a kind of a pool of content here, A, B, and C. They're going through some kind of experience and delivery, and the different visitors, based on some kind of information, are getting different content. In this case, Stan is getting A and C, and Jan is getting B and C. So just to get a little more concrete, as I was kind of preparing for the webinar, I was checking out Optimizely's website, and the website looked nice, and I was kind of struck as I was browsing down the homepage that all of the customer case studies profiled on the homepage were like German, either a German website or the German train station. And I was like, wait a minute, Optimizely, they're not just operating in Europe. And so I went ahead and logged in to a server that I have running in the States and visited the same website, and sure enough, they have their case studies personalized based on location. So as a visitor, they don't have to even analyze any behavior. I don't have to be logged in, but already they can be making something that's more relevant for me. Yeah, so just to make it clear, like, what are the benefits? So it's definitely a win-win kind of thing. So visitors are getting more relevant content, and website owners are getting more conversions, whatever you're trying to do with your website. And you'll find a wealth of statistics on how fantastic personalization is. Of course, it totally depends on how you implement it. So that's what I wanted to get to next. Like, what does it actually mean to do personalization? How do you do it? And there's really, the way I see it, there's really two key components to it. So obviously, in order to personalize something, you need to know something about your visitor. So somehow you need some data to perform the personalization, or to divide your visitors into segments. That's the first part. And the second part is that, well, once you know who they are, which content do you want to give them? How do you decide what to give them? How do you maybe manage or create all that content? That's kind of the second component. And I mostly want to talk about the how you personalize part, the data part. So there's two key types of data for personalization. And that's explicit, which is basically stuff that the user told me directly, and implicit, which is something that I somehow figured out about the user. So let's look at explicit. User told me so. When they registered with your website, what are some ways to get people to give you some information? Well, let's give them something. So that would be, maybe providing them a cool video, a demo, a white paper, sign up to an interesting email list, and that would typically then be going into your CRM. It might be even more straightforward. I mean, think about where you give your interests, such as like a YouTube, where you're going to subscribe to specific channels. A lot of websites want to give you special messaging based on whether you're a B2B or whether it's a B2C scenario, such as, for example, like Dell Computer or many of those kind of manufacturers. They're going to ask you, hey, are you interested in business or in personal? And then another option would be that you're connecting to a social service, such as Facebook. Now, typically, you're not going to be able to just get Facebook information on your visitor unless they authorize you to do so. So you would make a connection to Facebook, and the user would opt into that. And then another really good example, which goes beyond the digital space, would be like a loyalty program sign up. So many of us have a card associated with our grocery store, which is like a loyalty program. And when we sign up for that, we're often giving them information like maybe our birth date or where we live. And this can then be used in the digital space as well. So what's an example of how we could use that information? Well, I'll come back to this example, but age groups. So if somebody is, for example, over 30 or under 30, they might be interested in different financial products, or, for example, if they're traveling, they might have different destinations, or you might want to just show them different imagery, even if it's the same destination. And then another common use case would be like if you might have different campaigns that are more relevant for one group or the other. Okay, that was explicit. Implicit is the things that you figured out about the visitor. So we already saw an example of that with the geolocation from the IP address. You could also use that for airline deals, for example, that are relevant just to where the visitor is visiting from. Yeah. Another nice one is, based on their behavior on the website. Is this the first time they've come to your website, or have they been there many times? If you're going to show them an email registration, you might only want to show that on the first visit. When they come back again, you don't want to irritate them with too many pop-ups, something like that. Or for example, like a newspaper like the New York Times, they have a paywall, but they let you have 10 free articles. So they're, in a sense, personalizing your experience based on how often you're visiting the site. A really powerful one is looking at their behavior on the website, or things that they're adding to their cart, if it's a shopping scenario. Last one there would be maybe they're visiting your website already coming from a campaign that you're running on some sort of advertisement network. Then you're going to have some information in the URL. You know what campaign they came in on, and you can keep on emphasizing that campaign in your website to maximize that. And the cool thing about that is that those are all anonymous things you can do with an anonymous visitor. So it's really within grasp. Now, if we take it to the next level, we can talk about a registered member. And again, if somebody has signed up through one of these offers to get a white paper or something, you might have them in your CRM, or for a different reason have them in your CRM. And then you can really start associating any information they gave you directly with this implicit information from repeat visits. Also, the loyalty card program. This is an incredible wealth of information that you can glean data from their shopping behavior over years at a grocery store or in another retail venue. Another thing that's interesting about this browsing behavior is you can even craft your website in such a way that you're going to be learning something about the visitor, not just allowing them to navigate your site. And I'll show you an example of that. And then as far as the cart, a really common one would be that you know, they're going to the checkout process, and you can do a cross-sell or an upsell right at the end and show other items that are similar to the one item, or maybe even to the combination of items that they have in their cart. One I wanted to also mention in particular was this customer status. So this is an interesting opportunity. For example, in a telecom scenario, they're already a customer, but they're at a certain level. You know, maybe they're at a lower bandwidth plan, and you can, you know, then upsell them to a higher bandwidth plan. There's certain offers that only make sense based on which level they're already at. Or if they're a silver member, you can offer them then the gold. So there's like a progression that a customer can take. So here's an example of that behavior-based personalization. This is the Magnolia demo website. We have a scenario about travel. And right away on the homepage, we have this question: which tour type are you? Active, cultural, or off the beaten path? So this is, of course, right away a nice way for the visitor to discover some tours that are related to one of these things. It would take them to a separate page. They can browse all those tours that are related to that. But in addition, we can remember that choice that they made. And when we come back to the homepage, or if there's other places, sidebars, we can already start personalizing the website based on this information that the visitor gave us. So now when the user browses around, they come back to the homepage, we don't need to ask them anymore what they're interested in. We can right away be promoting the featured tours in that category. So we've seen that you can do some very sophisticated things. What is the state of retail and personalization? And it's true that there's a lot of really advanced implementations out there, but don't let that get you down. Of course, all the case studies out there are of the fancy implementations, but in our experience, many of our customers either haven't gotten started, or they're just getting started with personalization. We even have some of our large retail, one of our large retail customers actually has one of these loyalty programs from a huge network of brick and mortar stores, which they have not yet to sync they have not yet synced up with their digital website. So it can be a mixed blessing, is what I want to say, if you have all that information, because it can be hard to figure out how to most effectively use it. I also wanted to mention just kind of some of the challenges that are out there. Targeting can be very useful, but you can go a little bit too far. So I have one example. There's the retail chain Target in the United States, based in my hometown, actually, of Minneapolis. And they did some fantastic analysis of their loyalty plan shopping. And they realized that they even could create for their visitors like a pregnancy prediction score. And then they were sending out physical coupons in the mail for products that somebody would want, because they even knew when the due date was based on their previous shopping habits. But there's a story, I'm sure this happened more than once, that an angry man came into one of the brick and mortar stores and said, "Hey, why did you send this mailer to my daughter? She's not pregnant." And of course, the store owner apologized. I'm not sure how that happened or why that happened. And it turned out later that she was indeed pregnant. So the moral of the story is, yes, you can achieve something with personalization and you can really help your visitors, but you can go too far as well. So just to wrap up this section on personalization, I wanted to offer a few tips. Like I said before, a lot of people haven't gotten started, and I would really recommend that you go ahead and start. And it doesn't need to be something sophisticated. In fact, I really recommend starting simple. And one of the reasons to start is that you're going to need to do some iteration on it. You're going to have to do some exploration on what's working best. And a reason to start simple is that if you start with a very complicated scenario, it can be quite difficult then to even judge how it's performing, and it can be too difficult for your content authors to even manage all of the different options going to different visitors. So start simple. For example, maybe just consider your most important segments. I have that example again of maybe your age, based on young visitors or old visitors. And a really easy technique to effectively do some personalization on your website would be to tag your content based on those segments. So go ahead, let's say it's tours. You could, tag the tour which is related to amusement parks or something like that for your younger crowd, and the ones that are more about wining and dining for your older crowd. And then once your content is tagged like that, you don't even need to create new content to do the personalization. You can just tag your existing content, and then based on the data that you have of the users, just tease the content in sidebars on the home page for the content that's relevant for those visitors. All right, so let's get to our next topic, headless.
Headless, yes. And that's a funny term, because it's because it somehow suggests that if you don't have a head, you don't even have a brain, and then the question is whether this is at all something that you actually want to have in your tech stack, in a headless application. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, from the just the word of it.
Yeah, exactly. How do you promote less?
Yes,
less. Exactly. Why do I want that? Okay, what is it? What is headless? Personalization is pretty good buzzword. You can understand what it's about. Headless, not so much. It goes by a few other aliases, such as API first or decoupled. And the key to understanding it is what does head refer to? So the head of a digital property is referring to what's really being delivered to the end user. So it's that mobile app, it's the web page. So what does it mean if we take that away? Well, for CMS, a headless CMS is that just about managing the content, but it doesn't deliver the experience or generate the experience for the user anymore. That's not what it's about. It's just about managing the content. As an e-commerce system, it's about managing the products and about managing the transactions, but for any front end. It doesn't deliver a front end. And the way this works, that's why it's sometimes called API first, is that your content is getting delivered by a REST API. Okay, so explaining buzzwords with other buzzwords, maybe not that helpful. What's a REST API? So it's actually pretty simple. So that's probably why it's so popular. In the same way that you get a web page via a URL in a browser, a REST API is the same thing. It's a URL in a browser, but instead of giving you rendered content, you just get the pure data, usually as JSON. And I can show you an example of that in a bit. So again, a complicated diagram. So there's a full CMS. It's covering the content and the experience and delivery and sending that to the visitor. With a headless CMS, we're reducing that just to the content management and then making that available by APIs for the delivery and to the visitor. So that doesn't look that attractive. What's so exciting about a headless CMS when a full CMS gives me kind of the end-to-end solution? Whereas the headless CMS is more just it's almost like a service. Well, that's exactly the benefit. There's a lot of enthusiasm for microservice architecture, and it's going in that direction, and it basically is making things more flexible. Let's get to the key benefits. So when I say making things more flexible, it's easy to connect it to other systems. So if we have the full CMS, yeah, it gives me that rendering and that templating, but what if I don't want it? What if I just want that content management and I want to connect to some other system, like an e-commerce system or some existing delivery system that my company has already developed? In the same way that it's easy to connect to systems, it's easy to connect it to other front-end technologies and delivery channels. So that would typically be like a mobile app or a JavaScript front-end app. This is great for developers because they don't need to learn the templating system of a particular CMS. They can just learn React or Angular or use whatever templating system they already know and just connect to your CMS and get the content. You can also start projects a lot faster, typically. And the reason for this is that you're decoupling your content management with the templating and the website development. And this means that you can start entering content right away. If you're a team, you don't even have developers yet, you haven't sourced them yet, you can still start your project, get your content together, and when your developers come online, they can work in parallel. So that's another advantage, that you can work in parallel on content and on the experience. And then a fourth key advantage is that your content is future-proof. And what does that mean? Well, when you're working in a full CMS, it can be the case that your content is tied to the web page. So it's really only usable with that one style that you've developed, with that one implementation of your website. Whereas what you really want to do is make content that's more raw, just the content, and then you can use it with other devices that aren't even here yet, or the social channels that aren't even here yet. And just a side note, we talked about before with personalization, the benefit for the visitor. Headless is not really a customer-facing feature. It's really the key benefit is for the provider. Yeah, just a few examples I already mentioned, the mobile app, the JavaScript web apps, but we can also talk about kiosks in store. We could talk about chatbots in a website, or something like a smart speaker. Yeah, for example, in our case, we have a big retail customer that already had their own delivery platform and their own front end, and all they needed was a tool to manage the marketing content and the experience. And what was nice is that we were able to provide them something that didn't deliver the final web page, but was able to solve their problem of working on the marketing content and connect it to their existing systems. So let's take a look at this. I wanted just to show a quick demo of a smart speaker. So this is the Magnolia interface. and it is a full CMS, but you can use it in a headless fashion. And here we're going to be driving into something that's very typical to like a headless CMS. That would be like one content type. And again, in our demo, it's tours. So if we would click into that, we'd get a list of all our tours. We click into one of our tours, and again, this is a typical kind of form-based editing environment. And the benefit is that it's just raw content. I'm not dealing with the presentation side at all. Then I could use that on a website. It was the Surf and Safari. I can tease it there. I can have a nice full page showing that website. But what about the API? So just like I can hit a page and get the rendered website, I can hit an API, and now I just get that raw content delivered in JSON. It's all the same content, but without the formatting. And we actually developed this demo before there were smart speakers. So this kind of demonstrates the future-proof side of it. We went ahead and just, this is not live, but we made a demo of connecting the Alexa skill to our Magnolia live demo. So here's how that works.
Alexa, Magnolia travels.
Yo, dog. Welcome to Magnolia Travels. What do you want to do, or where do you want to go?
I'd like to go surfing.
I found one for you, Surfing Safari. Want some details?
Yeah, sure.
Famous for its stunning beaches and turquoise waters, Sri Lanka is a sight to behold. It's also one of the best places to go surfing in the magical Indian Ocean. Known as a year-round surfing destination,
Alexa,
the
stop.
island...
Yeah, so that kind of shows you the future-proof side of it. It's something that's going to be ready for any new channels that come along. But we also have some challenges with Headless. So one of the big ones is that there's no, like what you see is what you get content preview. So your authors are kind of disconnected, can become disconnected from how their content is actually used. And that's not really great for a marketer that really wants to control an experience. Another downside is that now you're going to need your developers again when you want to make a change in that mobile app. So that's kind of a bummer, because that's really one of the main advantages of a CMS, is kind of empowering self-service for non-technical staff. The other side related to that is like experience management. Working in a form isn't really the best. You really can't create a rich experience, a rich product page or a story. So I wanted to show you a little bit of how Magnolia has handled that. Here was this form-based editing. Okay, it worked in this case, but I really couldn't create something much richer than a body with the description. Whereas sometimes I want to mix videos, images, tweets, all those kind of different content types in one story. And that's why we created what we call the stories editor. And this gives us a very fluent way to create a rich story where I can mix all those content types all in one content item. And the benefit is that you can create an experience, a story, also a product universe type page, while still generating future-proof content. So we've ensured that the content that's created here can be used to generate a web page, but also any other type of experience. Now, just to come back to this diagram, I have a slightly more refined view of that. Above, we have the traditional CMS, where we're generating a web page and generating HTML pages, versus the headless CMS, where we're generating APIs, generating JSON for a different delivery system. And I just wanted to throw out a new buzzword for you, just for today, hybrid headless. We've basically just combined. You notice that the left side was the same, and this is really the way Magnolia operates. We have one CMS. We can deliver pages from it, or we can deliver an API from it. And that lets us kind of handle all the cases. And an especially interesting case that kind of solves that challenge that marketers can't create an experience anymore in a headless scenario. We can even have an API coming out of the pages that people are building. So even though they're using this WYSIWYG editor, we can still, instead of delivering a rendered web page, we can deliver the JSON that then a developer can use within the app. So you've got kind of the best of both worlds. The marketer can still create an experience, you're still delivering JSON from that, and the developer can make a flexible enough app that can accommodate this dynamic content coming from the CMS. I was wondering, Roman, if you could also say a few words about how Headless works in Commerce Tools.
Exactly. So I'd say almost all of what you said about how people can deal with content in the headless world also applies to, in this case, product data or everything else that you know from the commerce space. So if you imagine the prototypical e-commerce process, it's all about fetching product data and then sending information such as checkout information, the basket, shopping cart, and these things. So everything that you know from regular web stores also can be done via a headless system. It just means that, as we've said before, that you only have the body, and the body is basically responsible for maintaining all those data and then making sure that all the transactions are being stored, and then everything is pushed back to the front end, to any front end really, via the API. So front end could be, as we've seen, a website, but it could also be a voice interface, chatbot, artificial intelligence, augmented reality app. These types of interfaces that people are using to get inspired about their favorite products. And what you can see here is basically our idea of inserting, and we actually call it injecting, commerce functionality into any CMS. In this case, we see, but because we don't have a head and we don't have a CMS inbuilt, obviously, what we can do is insert little bits of functionality into the CMS so that marketers can then take those bits and pieces, say product images or prices or buttons, checkout buttons, or information about the cart, and then insert them into the overall experience. So in this way, you could create really a nice user experience, combining nice images and videos and longer texts with e-commerce related information. And this is also, or this can only be done by using a headless system, so that if we had a front end, obviously this would get in the way, but we don't, because we don't have a front end. It's very easy to integrate, in this case, Magnolia and Commerce Tools via REST API.
Yeah, I love how by delivering less, you're actually solving the customer's problem better.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the customer, it just gives you that flexibility.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps up the headless portion. The last buzzword we want to get to today is omni-channel. That's the best. Yeah, that's the best. That's the best buzzword. Come on, Omni.
Omni.
Got Omni in it. Yeah, everything. It does everything for you. I really couldn't resist throwing in an image from this magazine from the 80s. So yeah, kind of dates me. I don't know if anybody knows it, but it's this wonderful magazine covering like sci-fi and all the newest stuff that was coming out. So I think it's kind of relevant for omni-channel. Yeah, so what is it? It's basically just having all the channels, right? It's just if you have a website, a mobile app, some social integration, Instagram, I'm omni-channel, right? Not exactly. I think what that would be the multi-channel once those things get integrated, and omni-channel is about that integration side of it. So I like this quote from HubSpot website. It's a multi-channel approach to marketing, but it's creating an integrated and cohesive customer experience. That's really what it's all about. And very often omni-channel is referring to the intersection between physical in in-store experiences and the digital world. So it's often about making that connection, even if it can also refer just to the digital world. I also love this, came across this list of all the channels. All the channels, it was probably over 100 different channels, including sandwich boards and smells. So yeah, you can go wild with this stuff. Let's have another diagram. So this would be the multi-channel case. I do have a lot of channels coming in, and each one of them may have their own content that's driving them, and that can be the problem. Worst case scenario would be, or the multi-channel fail would be, I'm getting a discount through one channel, and on another channel I don't see it. Or I start a purchase in one place and nobody else knows about it. That's just disrupting my experience. In omni-channel, we still have all the channels, but it's not different content, it's one content, and it's not even just content, it's like one story or one journey that your visitor is going on. And this is really the focus. What are how do you want to interact with visitors, or how do they want to interact with you? Let them do that through whatever channel makes sense to them, but make it all work together. That's omni-channel. So benefits, visitors get the integrated seamless experience. They can do what they want to do. And as a function of that, website owners are going to get more conversions. And omni-channel is going two ways. Because we're linking those experiences from those different channels together, it's all part of one journey, we're going to be getting a lot of information back about the customer. We're going to know where they are on their journey, and that can be very useful. Okay, you can see I have a thing for Target here. They come up in this example as well. This is a really common use case, which is click and collect. So I'm starting a shopping experience online, maybe on my phone, start on my phone while I'm even in the store or somewhere else, and then I pick it up on my website, on a desktop. And then when I make the final purchase, instead of having it mailed to me, I might want it the next day or the same day, and I can send that cart basically to the local store and go collect it myself. And that's a great customer experience. They can get it when they want it. They can choose maybe if they want it sent to them or if they want to pick it up. So that's kind of that first example. Another one we've heard about a lot is like location-based. When they're maybe you're using a Bluetooth beacon, and you can give somebody an offer that's relevant to where they are. Maybe they're near your store, and then they can just go right in your store. We can bring the digital world into venues like a kiosk. We have some customers that have done some very nice work with kiosks in stores. Also, displays in airport can be driven by your content platform. Just going to cruise through this. Of course, you can integrate with other services. We have a nice example. There's a cinema called Pata Cinema chain, which on their website, they really wanted to consider the full experience. So they right away in their mobile app leveraged other platforms, such in this case it was Doodle for organizing a date and WhatsApp for contacting their friends, where you could, once you wanted to see a movie, you could right away invite all your friends to see the same movie, find a date, and then of course you're going to go and meet in the actual venue. A few tips. So omni-channel isn't multi-channel, but multi-channel is a foundation for it. So you do want to get your content in one place and have that content available on all the channels as a starting point. And then, just like in personalization, I'd really recommend starting with a focused goal, like one project or one typical customer journey, your most important customer journey. And then at Magnolia, we've been doing a lot of customer research, and this is something that we heard again and again from our customers, is that omni-channel, you can't just be in the website department and making decisions to do omni-channel. It's really a corporate level decision because it's going to cross all your departments. And you're going to want to align your departments on your goals. Just as an example, if you're incentivized, if you've got two different teams, one is in charge of your store, your bricks and mortar store, another one in charge of your website, and they have different incentives, your website owner isn't going to want them to look at it on the website and then go make a purchase in the store. Or likewise, in the store, they're not going to want to have you, just browse the material in the store and then go home and order it online. But if we're thinking of it not from your department's point of view, but from the customer's point of view, that's exactly what you want. You want them to be experiencing your brand in whatever location makes most sense for them. And that's why you need to align your departments on the goals. Yeah, so those are the buzzwords that we wanted to cover. Just wanted to wrap it up. You probably already noticed that they really work together. For omnichannel to actually work, you need to know where they are in the experience, and that's a form of personalization. So those two are tied together. If you want to be reaching more and more channels like the mobile phone or smartwatch or Alexa, then you're going to want to have like some headless implementation or hybrid headless. And in the same way, when you're working with headless, that can also be personalized. So these things are not in silos, they're all working together with each other. We can see the master diagram where all the things are working together. Now we have not just one story, but maybe some similar stories, one for Jan, one for every visitor. They're going to have their own story. They're going to have their own content that makes sense to them in that story, and that's going to be delivered into the channels that they want, including over headless channels. And you're going to be getting a feedback about all your customers that you can do to further improve the experience. I hope I've been able to convince you today that there really is something behind the buzz, and hopefully I've given you maybe a few ideas or a spark to take the plunge into one of them if you haven't already. And to execute these, it's going to work out best if you have a really solid content management or e-commerce system to implement them with, that either provides some of those features maybe out of the box or gives you a flexible platform that you can use to build upon and integrate with. And with that, I'd just like to have a few closing words about each of our products. So Roman, can you say something about Commerce Tools?
Yes, so first of all, thanks for your presentation. And yeah, Commerce Tools, we like to say it's a commerce platform in the cloud. And if we say cloud, we mean like real cloud. So it's an application that runs in the cloud. It's a multi-tenant application built for and in the cloud. And surprise, it's a headless platform, right? So it's a headless commerce platform that, as I said, is built without a specific front end, but enabling retailers and brands to create whatever front end experience they actually want to create, and then are able to connect to the platform via a very flexible API. And this is also what we like to call, which makes it perfect for the so-called post-web era. So everything that's beyond the classic web store, the classic desktop-based web store. So beginning from mobile apps to we've seen Alexa, we've seen chatbots. This is something that really lends itself to an API-first software stack, and also in combination with, in this case, Magnolia. What we like to call experience-driven projects, where really the front end is built and maintained by, or the experience is owned by the CMS, and then Commerce Tools can be tied in via its API. We are based in Munich, Germany, have a couple of offices throughout the world, serving customers throughout the world. And yeah, if you want to know more about us, please head over to this website and give us a call, give us a shout.
Yeah, cool. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, and then just a few words about Magnolia. So we are a CMS and a content platform. And why would you choose Magnolia? There's a lot of CMSs out there. Well, what Magnolia is fantastic for is integrations. And therefore, it's a great fit for a best of breed approach where you really want to choose the services that you want to work with and the products that you want to work with and put them together. Just as an example, you want to integrate your CMS. You don't want to use the CMS, you want to integrate your CRM in the project, for example, to personalize and to build an omni-channel experience. Commerce Tools and Magnolia work great together. We have a lot of customers using our products effectively together, and our staff would be really happy to give you a demo of how the products work together. It's not something for the webinar today, but please get in touch if you'd like to see a demo of how they complement each other. All right, so thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining, and we'd love to take any questions that you may have.
Yes, thank you. So I see a question that came in earlier in the session, and it's about, as far as I understand it, the ROI of creating extra content to address different audiences. So obviously, you have to spend more time creating this content, and so it must be worthwhile, right? Worth your while. So
yeah.
I think the question is whether there are any examples or showcases to support this.
Oh, I'm afraid I don't have any examples or showcases of it. I would just maybe point back to a few of the examples in the talk. It's a really good question, first of all, and it can be a burden. You do need to have a certain amount of content, but in many cases, you may find that you already have the content, and it's just about finding the most relevant content from that existing pool for the existing customer. Just to mention that Optimizely website, I mean, of course, they have a big pool of case studies, and all they needed to do was promote one or two of them that were most relevant to the customer, or in the case of the tours example, I already have that certain amount of content. It's just about picking out a few of those that I want to highlight. But yeah, in other scenarios, it certainly can be more work to maintain extra content.
Okay. And then another question that's probably on people's mind, especially since last week or the last 2 weeks, since the GDPR is in force.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you'd have to have some amount of personal data in order to do your personalization. So the question is it still possible to stay within the law and to personalize the experience?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question. I should have personalized the talk to include that. No, GDPR is certainly a concern. As everybody is aware by now, there is probably the main way to work with it is to ask for consent to store some information from your customers. GDPR, basically, it's required now that you need to ask for consent. You need to have the visitor opt in, and even double opt in. You need to check that they really want to have whatever analysis you're doing. But once they do opt in, then you can still do all of the same techniques. And then it's important to distinguish between personal data and personally identifiable information and anonymous data. So even if a customer doesn't give, there's certain things you wouldn't need to give a customer consent for. For example, doing the geolocation based on IP. I mean, in that case, you're not storing any customer information. There's nothing particularly about that person. So those are two considerations. Anonymous data, and you can do a lot with anonymous data. Also, even the behavior analysis, as long as you're not linking it to a specific person, then that's okay if it's anonymous. Another thing that's interesting about GDPR is that it can actually, in a way, kind of be beneficial for your approach. For one thing, you're going to be you're only going to be contacting users in the way that they want to be contacted, which is great. That's the way it should be. And your contact lists are going to be much more relevant. Many of you have already seen that. Companies are ensuring that their customers have opted into their mailing list, so you're going to have just the audience that you really want to speak with. And there's another requirement of GDPR that can actually improve your omni-channel experience creation, and that is that one of the things you need to do with GDPR is a customer needs to be able to, if they want, they need to be able to request that their data be forgotten, the right to be forgotten, or to update their content. And in order for us or you as website providers to be able to provide that service, you need to put together the maybe disparate customer information you've been collecting in order to comply with GDPR. So if you haven't already done that, you need to combine the in-store information, the digital information that you might be getting from different channels into one cohesive view of that customer. And then if the customer wants to be forgotten, okay, you can't use that information anymore. For those that are fine with you using their information, now you can really deliver that omni-channel experience that people are so excited about now.
Okay.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, we just see your Twitter handle here, my Twitter handle, so people can approach us and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We actually ran out of time, and yeah, I think all that's left to say is thanks again for taking part, thanks for joining, and have a great day. Thanks, Topher.
Yeah, thanks, Roman. It was great.
See you soon.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.